everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Humanized Automation. I am your host, Dr. Jill Schiefelbein, and today I am super excited because it's very rare that you run across people that are as unfiltered in their real life as they are in their business life and use it to their advantage to thrive. And the guest today is exactly this person. Jeff Wright is our guest today, and his big thing now, I mean, he's been stupid successful in the insurance game, but his thing now is from blame to fame. And if you want to talk about a no BS way to approach how you transition from excuse making and everything else to making yourself known, this is the guy to do it. So Jeff, welcome to the show.
Jill, thank you for having me. What an honor.
So I want to actually rewind a little bit, because when you look at, all my due diligence, internet stalking and conversations on things aside from beautiful art that you have in your background, it's really interesting where you come from, your perspective on money and working with businesses and working with individuals and making sure that people aren't getting, to put it frank, screwed over. Tell us about kind of your journey to where you are now.
Well, I grew up in Georgia. I live in South Florida now, but I grew up in a very small community about an hour south of Atlanta. And it was one of those areas to where, people lived there. They were born there, they lived there, and they died there. And the two major jobs that people had was either working in cotton mills 7 days a week or out in the woods cutting timber. And my father had a grocery store, so we got to see all these people. And you heard all these limiting beliefs. You heard, because your only view of the world back then, we had an old TV antenna. We could only pick up 3 channels, 4 if the weather was right. That and the Atlanta paper. And so that was our view on the world. That was the only thing that we really knew. And, I would see people like on the 4th of July, for example. I was a kid. You'd see all these people going to the lake. They'd have their boats. They come in and they buy beer and they buy ice. And I'm not joining them. I'm working my ass off, throwing ice in there and pumping gas and doing all this stuff. I'm like, oh shit, these are the luckiest people in the world to be able to do this. And the people around that work for my dad said, no, you'll never be able to do that. You'll always be stuck here. You'll always be doing this. And so, you really become kind of the product of the environment that's around you. And my worldview didn't really change until I was like 15 years old. We had a high school trip to Europe, like 10 days 10 countries in 8 days, something like that. It was a whirlwind deal. I'd never been out of the country. I'd never been on an airplane before. And I remember, just like it was yesterday, landing in London and seeing all this stuff I'd never seen before. And I'm like, holy shit, there really is a world outside of the world that I live in. And back then I was really, and I still am, I love James Bond. So I kind of took on this James Bond persona. We're walking through the streets and like, is Blofeld going to come around and kill me? All that stuff. But I just saw, so many things that opened my eyes so much that, yeah, there is a different world out there. And this is what I choose to do. This is what I choose. I'm not going to stay where I am, because if I stay where I am, I'll never get to do this. And so I changed my whole mindset into, this is what I wanted. It's very easy, or it's much easier to get to where you want to go if you can clearly define where it is that you want to go. And the more clearly you define it, the easier it is to get. It's like if I hop on a plane in Miami and fly to New York, I'm going to one that's actually going to New York. I don't just hop on a random plane and hoping that they'll just randomly stop there and let me off. So the more clearly you define whatever your vision is, the more easily you can get there.
I think the FAA might have something to say about randomly dropping you off at planes you didn't, buy a ticket for. But that aside,
I was going to say that only happens when guns are involved.
There's a whole lot of problems then. But, I come from a small town as well in Kansas. And it's funny because a lot of my backstory is similar, where there's still many people there that, still live there, have never even left the state, except maybe to a neighboring state of Missouri or Oklahoma or something. But, now what I find really interesting is people who grew up in areas like that, and especially when both of us grew up, you didn't have access to information unless you were fortunate enough to get to go on a trip like that to Europe to realize things. For me, it was getting out and taking a trip to Atlanta, ironically enough, since you just brought it up, to see that there are other, at my time, it was high school kids that were nerdy like me, that were achieving like me, who like to public speak like me, all of these things letting me know I'm not alone and that there's more out there. But now we're in an environment where if you want to learn something, if you genuinely have curiosity, there is zero excuse not to be able to explore right now.
No, there is no excuse. The thing is, what baffles me, quite honestly, is so many people they have access to all this information that I never had. They have access to everything. I would have killed to have had access to this stuff. Yet it seems like the more access they have, the more stifled they become. I don't know if that's because they're overwhelmed with it or it's what they're taught. I don't know. But I do know this. Being in South Florida, there's a lot of immigrants that lived here, and I married an immigrant. My wife is from Russia. And the immigrants that I see, and my wife said that when she first came to this country, she lived in a part of Russia where the grocery stores were empty. And the first time that she went to North Carolina and walked into a Piggly Wiggly, she thought that she was in Disneyland. Of course, now she wouldn't drive within 100 miles of a Piggly Wiggly, but that was then, this is now. But just to see the options and then wondering, what are these people complaining about? You have so many blessings that are right in front of you. That's one reason why I encourage a lot of young people, if they're thinking about going to college, put that off for a year or two and go live in another country for a couple of years. If you can, learn another language, learn another culture. It will become very apparent to you that the opportunities that are so available to you here in this country will become evident once they're gone, once they're missing. And when you come back, you're going to see opportunities that you would be blind to the rest of your life otherwise, because there's just so much here. And because we're so synthesized and so accustomed to everything, we don't see it. And you never, like they say, you never miss the good things until they're gone.
What's really fascinating about all of this, right? When you look at the way people are raised, the way people have access to information, how you can compare things to another, it's really fascinating to me, because when we look at the environment that we're in now and people who are choosing to start businesses, who are choosing to, change the status quo, change their path, obviously from my lens, a lot of that, once they understand where they're going, is this, I won't say reliance on technology, but the essentialness of technology coming in to make these experiences even more robust and allowing people to scale. I always say that technology, when used well, can not only make us more human, but it also can be a great democratizer, meaning a tiny business can have a legit advantage that large businesses have as well if they're able to use tools and resources effectively. And I think that ties back into what you're saying. You have these resources. Are you choosing to use them effectively or not?
I use a lot of these resources, but oddly enough, I think you can do overkill on the new things. A lot of things I do are very old school. Like, for example, this is a roll of stamps. I go through 3. There's 100 in a roll. I go through 3 of these a month. Okay. I write 250 to 300 thank you letters. I handwrite them. Thank you letters to people. Those thank you letters have gotten me so far. It's something that my grandmother beat into my head, and I started doing it. And I could tell you now that there are opportunities and relationships that are making me millions of dollars every year are because of those damn stamps. It's because I did it. And you know why? No one else does it. No one, hardly anyone does it. I have a deal that I did with a company where we do business with the military, and they interviewed 7 or 8 different companies to represent them. I was the only one that actually hand wrote all those generals a thank you letter, and they told me that is why I got the deal and they didn't.
Yeah.
I had less experience. I was not in the military. I didn't have all the vernacular down, but because I did that, that pushed me way above and beyond everyone else. So you can become, I think, too dependent on it. It's a great tool to use for sure. But I think you can definitely become way more dependent on it, just like social media. I think the other problem too, Jill, where a lot of people struggle is the fact that they see how things are in the world, and their language and the way that they interact with people has become very homogenized. And if you're authentic in your way, I cuss a lot. I say a lot of inappropriate shit, but I say what I mean and I do what I say. And that, does it repel some people? Of course it does. It has repelled people, but it has also drawn to me the true, for lack of a better term, fans that I have, is because I talk straight. I always tell the truth. I tell it unfiltered, and I tell people what they want. I tell people what they need to hear, even if they don't want to hear it.
And I think there's the theme of all of that essentially is 2 things. One, it's breaking the status quo. What is out of the norm, and what do you do that's tried and true? And then in looking at that in any business, from my lens, obviously I'm a huge fan of tech when used well. And that's the key phrase there, when used well. And what I think is really fascinating is I would never in a million years say, hey, why don't we automate your letter writing process with something else? No, you have something that has a human touch that you have fit in your workflow and that works for you. It's the same thing when people come to my second company and want to get cloned, right? They want to have their avatar, their digital likeness out there. And I said, now listen, this is not for where you are already doing real human video. This is to add a level of personalization, of customization, of agency of choice for your audience, for your consumers that you wouldn't be able to do as a mere mortal. Because no matter what, instead of sending an email, for example, to 1,000 people that are key targets for something, that you can send 1,000 different individual personalized videos with your likeness, customizing that message is now something in addition to the email that you can do. But it's not going to replace a handwritten note, no matter how much those stupid handwritten fonts on the computers try to.
Yeah, actually, somebody told me that they went and bought a handwriting printer. I didn't even know those things even existed. And I understand they're pretty expensive, but I wouldn't get one, because if somebody who's used to getting these notes got one, they would know that it would be from me, but it would not be from me, because I have the crappiest handwriting on earth. And my handwriting is terrible. I could have been a doctor, Jill, but it was just the science part I had a problem with. Outside of that, I would have been a great doctor.
There's no BS in the diagnosis that you'd give on. That'd be good too. No sugarcoating that. Sorry, there's something terrible happening, and I'm going to tell you straightforward.
And the thing is, no technology, nothing will replace good habits and commitment, and commitment to what you're doing. We got a new year coming up. And I will, as I always do, come late December, early January, I'll have guys that are calling me up. I haven't heard from them in a year or two, and say, hey, the new year's coming up. I'm getting ready to get back in the game. Okay. What's really out there working for people now? And I said, we're in a bunch of different markets, but the ones who focus on what they're doing, and quite honestly, the guys who go out and work their ass off, that's what works. The problem is, I think, for a lot of people, is there's just so many distractions out there. we chase after shiny objects way too often and way too quickly. I was talking not long ago to a human biologist out of Stanford, and she was talking about the dopamine effect of snorting cocaine versus cold plunging. I've never snorted cocaine in my life. I don't do that because I know I would love it. That's why I don't do it. But I do cold plunge every day that I can. And so she's talking about the dopamine, how all this affects your dopamine. And we were talking about a friend of mine who has Parkinson's way too early in life. And he was in the car business, and there was, there's a lot of cocaine use in that culture, or there was back in the day. And so I mentioned to her, what about social media? Because I understand that people's attention span on social media is 3-4 seconds. And that's it. Are there any links between that and Parkinson's? And she said that there is. They just haven't fully studied it yet. But your brain doesn't know the difference between scrolling and doing a line of blow. It just doesn't know the difference. So that dopamine. So the going back, and I don't want to get off on that track, but I think what makes anyone successful in what they do is focus, is to focus on that one thing and to get away from the notion of instant gratification. And that's another problem with a lot of the automation, is they spend this money learning, they're using the technology, and granted, most of these people that are out selling this stuff, it's very much an overpromise, underdeliver type thing. They put out the notion that you pay us this for this avatar that we're going to do, and your business is going to change overnight. Well, we all know that's bullshit. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
It's a tool, but you can't use it as a crutch to replace everything else it is that you're doing.
Well, there's so many companies I work with or audiences that I speak to, and I eradicate this thought right away, is AI, generative AI, synthetic media, it's not a silver bullet. If your business isn't already in a good place, this is not going to magically put it in a good place. What it is going to do, from my perspective, is when you go into a business, you look at any business, you look at their communicative processes, you look at their customer experience and life cycle, you look at where there's friction, frustration, or attrition. Then you can start to see, okay, we know that you have a 50% conversion rate. That's great. Can we use technology then to move it from 50 to 60% or 50 to 70%, whatever that may be? Or you have a high turnover rate. Can we, within your resources that we have, facilitate some type of communicative intervention that is going to drop the amount of people leaving your company? What is it that we can use that tool for? But most people, to your point, they play with it like a shiny object. Does it give me instant gratification? Okay, great. Let's keep scrolling. Let's keep clicking. But this isn't, long-term sustainable businesses aren't built on instant gratification results.
No. Not at all. What we use the AI technology for the most, and for us personally, I think this is the best use of it, is to nurture existing clients. That is by far the best thing. I am a firm believer that if you're running almost any kind of business, unless it's a funeral home, if you aren't getting at least 50% of your business from referrals, you're doing something wrong. And the problem is, particularly in my business, is the fact that someone will go sell a life insurance policy to someone. They're giving them their money. They're giving them their trust, because we're having to learn all kind of information about them. They're giving us their bank account, their social security number, they're all their precious info. They're giving to us. And that requires, especially these days, a huge amount of trust to have someone hand over all that stuff. And then a lot of our people won't go back to them because they're afraid that these people are going to have second thoughts and they're going to cancel what they have. Like, oh, well, they don't, I'm not going to talk to them again because they're going to say they don't need this anymore. And, they're going to let it go, and it's going to cost me a lot of commission money and all that. Now, like, that is so wrong. That is so wrong because there are so many people. If you have an existing customer, if you keep your name in front of them, and I'm not talking about every day, just hitting them with touch points, just to let them know that you're there. That's what it takes. When COVID happened, we do a lot of business with police and fire departments all over the country. And when COVID happened, 99, unless they were here in Florida, nobody was letting us in anywhere. COVID only lasted like 3 days in Florida. But, my guys, my management guys were asking me, what are we going to do? And the thing that I did not say to them is, I don't know. Because as a leader, when you say, I don't know, that destroys confidence in everything. So I was going to know whether I didn't know what the fuck to do or not. Right. And so I was thinking to myself, what can I do to keep these guys busy, add value, and maybe help them keep them some sanity? And so I instructed them all to start writing letters, handwritten letters, to all these police chiefs, all these battalion commanders, all these people, not trying to sell them anything, but just saying, hey, I know this is a tough time. If there's anything we can do, to help your people or whatever, just let us know. Just wanted to reach out and let you know that we deeply appreciate your service and the things that you're doing. And I would have these guys write the letters. They would send, I had them, this is how I held them accountable to doing it. I would have them box up these letters and ship them to my office, and we would pay for the postage. We would put stamps on them, and we would mail them all from here. And the people that didn't do it, I let them go. I fired them. And I can tell, and I lost probably 15% of my sales force just because they wouldn't write the letters, because they thought it was mundane and they thought it was stupid. They're sitting there doing that and they're not having any money in. Because we wrote those letters, Jill, 3 months later, we were on a trajectory. Our business literally 4X'd just because of those letters, of nurturing them and staying in touch with them.
I'm not surprised.
And then like we said, using the technology to send videos, to send emails or whatever. It's amazing. But you have to use some things like that to nurture your existing clients, because you want to let them know that you care. You don't want to let them know that you were just this guy that just came by and got their money and you left. Who wants that? No one does.
It's so true. And especially in like a high touch, high trust industry, like insurance, right? When you are getting, I went through this 2 years ago when I got this new policy. It's one of the most invasive processes to get life insurance. Like, it's awful. Yet I get this policy. I'm happy with the policy. I'm happy with the returns. I'm happy with the actual policy. But you know what? Once a year, I get pinged by my account guy like, hey, it's time to go have a bourbon and just check in and make sure everything's okay. I'm like, I'm going to go take a bourbon because I go to my favorite steakhouse, get a bourbon. It's a nice thing. I enjoy it. And he's a good dude. I enjoy talking to him. But every time I'm like, man, you need to find a way. And I know it's not a core part of your business, but you need to find a way to have these regular touch points, not from the brand, not from the insurance brand that has these generic emails that are sent out, but from you. And my big thing is, and for me, when I look at how do you humanize these automations, I'm like, your customers. If you tag them and categorize them right and get your data in order, when any piece comes out in the news, it's click on the category, click on the tag, boom, communication can go out. And you're giving those touch points that are relevant, that are applicable, and all those things. It's not, hey, send me this generic email on my birthday. I hate that crap. I'm like, nobody got this generic birthday email that's like, oh my gosh, I got such a warm fuzzy. But you know what? My financial planner that I've had since 2012, every single year, handwritten card, everyone in the office signs it. And it's those things that are different. It's also those things that throughout the year, when you're sending, instead of generic emails to people, which I'm not dissing on those, but sending instead, let's say it's Northwestern Mutual, big life insurance company, right? Boom. They send out these emails to anyone that has their policy, but then yet your person says, hey, FYI, tomorrow or yesterday, an email came out from Northwestern Mutual. I'm sure it's probably not the most high on your importance list. However, what's in the second link that they sent is a really good resource. And I'm putting it down here for you again, because I think it would benefit you with the size of business you're currently running. Like those personal things can all be automated if you have your data in order. And those, I think, to your point, it's not the handwritten things are amazing. I would never change those, but it's also finding ways that you can add value through those touch points throughout the year.
Yeah, you know how rare it is to have an insurance agent that actually does that for you? He's in the top 2%. Most of them don't do it.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I have guys that make over $1 million a year selling insurance. And when I talked about doing letters and whatnot, their first question, well, am I supposed to pay for that? Who's going to pay for that? I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? This, I said, this is gonna, build your business up way more than the cost of anything. And you're worried about who's going to pay for stamps. Are you kidding?
The short-sightedness is amazing sometimes.
It really is. It amazes me how people, I don't particularly like people that are cheapskates. First of all, I don't know any cheapskates that are happy. I really don't. I don't know any penny pinchers that are really happy people, and I bet you don't either.
Mm-mm.
And they miss out on so many opportunities because of small money. I'll give you a great example. He passed away years ago, but I had an agent who wrote an annuity one time, and he made a $2 million commission. $2 million. And he calls me. He's all excited about it. And I'm excited because we made a lot of money off of it too. And about 2 weeks later, he's calling me screaming that the insurance company had lost the contract. They lost the check and what was going to happen to him and his money. I said, all right, calm down. Give me the FedEx tracking number on this thing and let me check this out. He says, I didn't send this FedEx. I'm not paying $15 to overnight anything. I said, you mean you mailed it? Yeah. He says, actually, I used one of these prepaid envelopes that the insurance company has that has no postage on it. And I said, hey, brother, you're on your own. His customer found out that the check had gotten lost and that he did not FedEx it. Not only did the customer withdraw the case, this guy put a $20 million cashier's check in a postage paid business reply envelope. And not only did the guy rescind his deal, he told all his friends about how cheap this guy was, losing a $20 million check. And it nearly destroyed this guy just because he was too cheap to spend $15 on a FedEx.
And this is where it comes down to when you're investing in your business. And I try to, whether I am going to a speech that is paying me nothing because I'm doing it pro bono or something that's paying me well into 5 figures, it doesn't matter. It's a client. You treat the client the same way. You give people the same experience. You work with people in a way that is human. And if you're not willing to do that, I question why you're in business in the first place.
Yeah. And people ask me all the time, because I travel a lot. I spend $250,000 a year on plane tickets. And could I eliminate a lot of that? Yeah, I could, but I still like seeing people eye to eye. I still like shaking their hand. And I admit I'm getting older and it does take its toll. When you and I had our podcast, I had just gotten in at 2:00 that morning from Texas. So I was, kind of out of it, but, I still power through it. But the technology is fantastic, as you say, if used in the right way. And not everything has to be about your business. The one thing that I do, that I really try to get a lot of our people to do, is text. Just a simple text message. Text 5 to 10 people every morning, not wanting anything. Just saying, hey, if it's a relative or a friend, hey, hope you're doing well. I love you. I appreciate you. Or if it's a customer, hey, just want let you know I appreciate everything that you do for us. I hope your kids are doing well. Whatever. Because how many times do you get a phone call and you look at the phone and wonder, and you see who it is, and you wonder, I wonder what the hell do they want?
Yep.
It happens to me all the time. Most people only call you or reach out to you if they want something. And if you can be that person who doesn't always want something, then the chances of them responding to you when you really do need something from them are substantially higher. So, use the technology not to always, be shaking your tin cup for money. It's adding value to, we'll send out emails we'll send out cooking videos. One time I had some friends of mine at the FBI do a video for us on surviving an active shooting, on what to do if some nut job comes into Walmart with a shotgun, what to do. Which you should run. You shouldn't huddle up and hide. You should run the fuck out of the building is what you should do. But, and then then they talked about most of the fatalities in these active shootings were not a result of a gunshot wound actually instantly killing someone. It was from people not knowing how to stop bleeding. And then we did a whole other video series on how to stop bleeding. It's really important. I learned stuff I didn't know. I carry blood trauma kits in all my cars now because of that. But people see that. We're not trying to sell them anything. We're trying to give them information that could be useful to them one day. And how many people thanked us for sending them videos on stopping blood loss and active shooting? A lot did, because it's information that they want to know, and maybe can give them some peace of mind if, God forbid, something like that were to happen. But it doesn't always have to be about always trying to take their money, because that's a big turnoff.
No, it is. So I think it's safe to say, if I'm summing up your beliefs on technology, and tell me if I'm hitting the nail on the head or if I'm completely off on this, it's use it strategically, use it sparingly, use it to provide touch points and efficiencies that you weren't already doing, but make sure it's being used to connect with people, giving them something they need or they want, not always asking for more for you.
Exactly. What you're doing with Render, I think I told you that was my dad's name, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But to have something like that where someone can do a Q&A with you through AI. Of course, you let them know.
Absolutely.
And I saw your avatar, and you let people know right away it's not really you. It's AI. So you have to be honest about it. But to do that, to answer questions, that's fantastic. To use it as ways to keep in contact with people. The biggest thing I use AI for personally is really just as a first step, or as a jumping point. If I have an idea in my head and I can't really figure out how I'm going to start it or how I'm going to place it, or if I'm writing a book, I'll put my ideas in there of, how would I start this? Then it gives me a starting point. Do I use its suggestions verbatim? Never. But it gives me ideas of where I'm like, okay, that's really great. I can start with this, this, and this. I don't like this. And then I go from there. And that makes things so much easier. But unfortunately, I have a feeling a lot of people do their programs and do their books just completely on AI. They tell it what to do. They don't even read it, and then they send it off. I read every word.
It's so crazy when that happens. And I think, yes, if you are building privately trained expert level systems, that's a different case, right? But that's very few and far between right now. But for me, it's like if I can use AI to get me 50% out of the blank page, 20% out of the blank page, any efficiency that it can do from a generative standpoint to get me going, to me, that was a good use of a tool and technology, because what did it do? It saved me the one thing I can never get back, which is time. And time is what we can use to be more human with each other, to have these conversations, to make those connections. And I think going back to kind of, wrapping this up, but coming full circle back to the whole blame to fame thing. Right. And everyone, that's Jeff's book. Definitely go check it out. And if you like his no BS approach on here, you're going to love that book even more. So when you look at this, it's so many people using a generative AI tool, for example, copying and pasting crap verbatim, and then blaming the tool not being effective when it didn't work. And that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
No, not at all. Not at all. People will say, well, I made the mistake of years ago doing sales scripts for people. I stopped doing that because they don't work. They just don't work. What I say in the way that I say it is going to come across completely different if someone else is using that same script verbatim. And the other reason why I really dumped doing that is because, and this is important for everybody to understand, it's not just sales, it's in your relationship, it's in everything. When you're doing a sales presentation, if you're talking to your husband or talking to your wife or whatever, if you are trying to get a point across or help them listen or make them feel like they're being listened to and they're heard, you only talk, if you're talking more than 10% of the time, you're talking too much. You only ask questions because everybody's situation is different. And AI asking these different questions based on the answers and expanding on things, it's difficult to do that, or at least I think it is. Maybe you know something about that I don't. But it's like, I'm a Porsche fanatic. I have a bunch of Porsches, and my sales guy at the Porsche dealer here in Naples, I went to buy my first car from him, and the first thing he tells me is, "Oh yeah, this one will go 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds. It'll do this, it'll do that." And I said, "How do you know that's what I want it for? You never asked. How would you know that?" I said, "What if I were buying this for my daughter," which I would never do. But how do you know I'm not? If I were buying that, then I would want to know about the safety features of this thing. It would take a completely different direction. What if I was divorced and I was wanting to get the car to go pick up women, date young girls again in the car? How do you know? You have to ask questions to find out what's important to them. Because once you find out what's important to them, then that's the trajectory that you take that on. With any kind of sales and anything in business, you find out what's important to them, and then you let them explain to you why it's so important. You don't tell them why it's important. They already know. You want them to tell you, and that does two things. It helps you understand, but most of all, as they're telling you, they're listening to 100% of what they're saying. You could say the same thing to them and they're going to only retain 5 or 10% of it. But if they're telling you, they're living in it, they're breathing in it, and they're hearing 100% of it. And I don't know if AI could do that or not, but that's kind of how we roll.
I love it. It's so funny. As soon as you talk about that, it brought up a memory in my head. And a lot of what you said matches what I have not my most recent book, my book before that. I think it's like chapter 5 is quite literally titled Death by Sales Script. And it's really about that. Not even kidding you. And it's really about that. And it's the same thing, I think, as people are using and approaching these AI tools. If you're not going to edit it, if you're not going to take time to hone it into your specific use case for your customer's need and focus on your audience first, in sales, in relationships, in every area of business, you're completely missing the boat.
Yeah, one of the ones that I did that with was actually with a police officer years ago, and he did not want to be talking to me. He was he was a young guy. The problem with young guys is they think they're going to live forever. Well, none of us do. And so I could tell he was a really, really proud guy. And I asked him, I said, "How many kids do you have?" "Well, I got 3 little girls." And he was being a real jackass. And so finally I did something that I don't know why I did it, but it was kind of like either he's gonna get a policy or he's gonna beat the shit out of me. One of the two. There's only 2 outcomes here. I said, "Let me ask you something. If you were to get gunned down tomorrow and you're killed and you leave your wife broke, how long do you think it's going to take her to find a new guy to be bouncing your little girls off his knee and having them call him daddy?" And he just went, "Holy shit, I don't want that." And he kind of shook a little bit. I thought he was going to come across the table, and he said, "Actually, I want to buy more than what we're talking about." And so he went from, we were talking about getting $100,000 policy, and he actually ended up getting $2 million. But I was using that just to make him see what the future would look like if he were to get gunned down tomorrow. And I don't recommend people do that. That was a really ballsy move, but it triggered him, and it made him trigger himself in a good way.
Well, and it's again, it goes back to the point of it's about what your audience needs, what's going to motivate them, what is going to move the needle for them. And throughout any type of business negotiation, personal negotiation, no matter what it is, it's never about you, the person selling, or never about you, the person speaking. It's always about the person on the other side of the proverbial table.
It's all about them. It's always all about them. You can talk about features and benefits all day long. They don't care about that. They want to know what it's going to do for them.
100%. Well, everyone, this has been such an interesting conversation. If you want to learn more about Jeff, you can follow him on social. We'll provide all the links and all that type of stuff for you, so you don't need to worry about it now. But definitely look up From Blame to Fame. Super easy to remember, super catchy, and super useful, especially if you're one of those people, and it all happens to all of us. Even the people who write about this stuff, I'd imagine, not calling you out, not making you answer, but we all get stuck sometimes, and we need to get out of our own heads, and we all need something or someone to help us do that. And Jeff's book is right up there with it. So Jeff, thank you so much for being with us today on Humanize Automation.
You are so welcome. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope I can give some value to some of your people, some of your listeners for sure. The book is all about, at the end of the day, it's about creating habits, and without creating unbreakable, non-negotiable habits, we're going to end up like the rest of the herd. So that's what sets you apart more than anything.
Love it. Love it. All right, everybody, stay tuned. Another episode will be dropping soon, but thank you once again for tuning in to the show. And please make sure you subscribe, review, comment, share, all those things that podcast hosts like you to do. And if you just want to keep listening and not do any of that, that's all right. I'll keep you as a listener too. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you or be heard from on the next episode.